Okay. Hi, and welcome to the Halfie Project podcast. My name is Becky. Sitting across from me at the table is Cedric Sky and you're listening to yet another good episode. Fingers crossed.
Another fun one.
Yeah. Hey.
Hey.
Have you ever invented anything before?
I invented swag. I don't get any credit for that, but that's what I invented.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Does it?
Yeah, I mean, you always see people walking around full of swag, and when you ask them, where are you from? And they say, isn't it obvious? And I was like, oh, I just saw your swag, and I was curious. And they say, well, if you're wondering about my swag, I got it from Sky City. They always say that.
Wow, you really took that to like a whole nother level.
Oh, yeah. You were kidding.
No, I was serious, but you made a whole little story behind it, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do my research.
Yeah.
See?
But invented something? I've invented probably my own ways of making food, but...
What does that mean?
I don't know, like, I think one time I invented a peanut butter jelly sandwich with honey and, like, put something like raisins or something in it. I think that's original. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are probably like, that's so not original. But, yeah, so something dealing with food or making my own way of eating something.
Your own way of eating? What do you mean? Like using your toes to pick up your chopsticks?
Yeah, exactly. Or just like eating with my mouth or something. Just...
What are you talking about?
I mean like how a dog or a cat would eat their food. Okay, anyways, have you invented anything?
You know, inventions are usually the sign of a person who's very innovative. Well, I mean,
I'm a simple man.
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
So you definitely have been thinking outside the box. You know, for me, my inventions include, well, I would say there's a number of things I invented, but one of my most memorable inventions was when I was in, I think it was my freshman year of high school. And I really wanted braces so bad because, you know, all my friends were having braces. And one girl I knew just got hers off and she had the most perfect, beautiful teeth. And I was so jealous. So I asked my parents, can I have braces? And they said, no, your teeth are fine. And then I remember I went to my room and I invented my own braces. I wrapped as many teeth as I could together with a hair band. You know, those very thin rubber hair bands?
Yeah.
That you use when you're making tight braids or stuff. I just wrapped them around these teeth at the front, and so they would squeeze together. And I wore them overnight. And I woke up the next day, and my teeth hurt so bad I couldn't wear them anymore. I took them off.
Wow, I can't believe it actually worked, though.
Well, didn't work. My teeth didn't straighten at all.
Well, I'm saying, like, I mean, something happened.
Oh, that it actually stayed on my teeth.
because you were sore, so.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was a failed invention, but I invented it.
It's a lot better than what I had to offer, so.
Yes. I got to
Good
say,
job to you.
Your inventions have a little work to do, but I look forward to your future amazing recipes to come.
Indeed.
So we're talking about inventions, not just because we want to shoot the breeze, but because we're going to talk about 10 Korean inventions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of these will probably shock you.
Some surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little surprised by a few of these. Some of them, you know, I expected, and some of them were more interesting than I ever imagined.
Right.
But for sure, there were some new ones.
Yeah, at the end of this, because we don't want to give it away, why don't you let me know which one surprised you?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, foresight. So let's talk about our first Korean invention. This one is called ondol.
Very fitting for the current, I guess.
Temperatures.
Yeah.
Yeah. So ondol is, if you live in Korea or if you visited Korea and two other places in the world, you might have encountered ondol before, but it is not prevalent at all in Western societies. And ondol is a very, I would say, brilliant system of heating up your house.
Yeah.
Right. So the way ondol works, and, you know, I actually drew a picture and everything on my notes to kind of grasp how Ondur worked, but it's essentially a system of hot pipes or pipes full of fire or smoke or hot water, I guess depending on what era we're talking about, and these stones placed under the floor and they're heated. So the traditional Ondur system would have these at the kitchen. In the kitchen you would have the fire, and you would cook on top of the pot, on top of the fire, and then the fire is used to heat up the food. But then they would also utilize the smoke and heat that they're using from the cooking fire to travel under the floor through a system of pipes and a sort of, I guess, smokestack, like a way for smoke to escape on the outside.
Kind of like a chimney type
Kind
of
of
system.
like a chimney, but going directly outside. And the stones under the floor would absorb the heat, and they were able to hold the heat for a long time. So it was very efficient, and you were using one fire for cooking and heating the house.
Right. Brilliant.
Really brilliant, I would have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is, this is a very traditional invention that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, but that's one of the few things that you can find still present today, which is extremely common. You can't really find like the Western style of heating in anywhere that
I've
you
never
go.
seen it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, maybe some of the newer buildings, I don't even know if residential areas have it,
I don't
or
think
residential buildings, but maybe commercial spaces, maybe. But yeah, Ondur is the common way of heating a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's very interesting because Korea has over time really evolved into just adapting to a lot of Western technology. But Ondur remains the same.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I mean, obviously, we're not cooking on fires anymore and using that fire to heat up the whole house.
No.
But the concept of it and the system under the flooring still exists. And if it's hard to understand kind of what it looks like, you don't want to visualize it, just look it up. Ondur, Korean traditional heating system, and you'll see some drawings or I guess diagrams that show it a little bit better than how we're explaining. But yeah, it's been around for a very long time, even all the way back to the Iron Age, circa 2nd century. And all the way up to the 13th century, then they started showing, a whole room could be heated by this instead of just a part of it. And it was prevalent everywhere, starting from the Joseon era.
Right.
And so,
Everywhere in Korea.
Everywhere in Korea, right. And it seems that the only other place Ondur is used is in northeastern China and parts of Mongolia, especially people who live in yurts.
In yurts?
Yeah.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
yurts?
I don't know yurts.
Oh, yurts are the type of house.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know- you know yurts?
Yeah, I know yurts. Based on the videos that I've seen
Yeah.
of Mongolia.
Those are yurts.
Yeah, so I guess it's more like the straw type of housing. Not straw, but like it's not
No.
brick or wood. Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's not straw, but yurts were typically used by nomadic people. Yeah, so they could up and leave at any point they
Sure.
wanted to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm visualizing it.
Yeah. So Ondur, just another cool point about it is it's economical. So it uses 90% efficiency of gas to heat versus electricity, if you're using electric heating, would only be 40% efficient. What we see oftentimes in the West. It keeps your hands and your feet warm, but your head cool. So this is another positive aspect of Ondur. A lot of times people who use, let's say, heaters that we see in the West or blowing hot air, you get colds quite easily, or your face or your skin dries up, or right? There's some when you're having hot air blown on you all the time. But Ondur does not cause that. It just heats you up from the bottom up. Keeps your
Right.
head cool.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure there's a lot of science and research to back that. Well, I'm not pretty sure, but I would imagine that there are, because I know how like Asian, I guess, like science is like it's not necessarily science, but I can attest it's very effective,
Yeah.
and I love the way that I feel in my house.
Yeah.
I could say that.
Yeah.
So I've been here 3 years, and so no complaints. And the best part to me about Ondur is when you have it on in the winter, you can literally lay on the floor and it feels comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like one of the best parts.
That actually makes a lot of sense too, because traditional bedding, people were laying on the floor.
Yeah.
So you would keep warmer anyway.
Right.
Yeah. So if you want more evidence on why Ondur is so great and efficient, just do a comparison between the traditional Western fireplace and the Ondur system. And you will see why Ondur is certainly the best between those two inventions. All right, moving on.
Number 2 is Hangul, which
Hangul.
is the Korean alphabet
Yeah.
or writing system.
Yeah.
And this is actually celebrated nationally once a year. I mean, it's a national holiday
there is.
where we celebrate Hangul Day, which is the Korean alphabet again. And this one is cool because there's a lot of, I guess, interesting aspects to the writing system here. Namely, it's super simple and very easy to learn. We'll get into that in a second, but I want to mention that the person who is credited with coming up with the writing system is the late, great King Sejong. Yeah, and if you come to Korea and you hit up one of the most famous tourist spots, you'll definitely see a big old statue of him just sitting down.
Yeah.
So, like, he's a big deal here.
Yeah, he's considered as one of the most influential Koreans ever. And he is accredited to creating Hangul, not only creating Hangul, but spreading it out to all the people.
Right.
So the literacy rate in Korea used to be really, really low because before Hangul came around, people were using Chinese characters or a kind of blend between traditional Chinese characters and makeshift phonetic systems.
Right.
But there was nothing universal. So the literacy rate was very, very low. But thanks to Daewang Sejong, he was able to proliferate literature throughout the entire kingdom. And Korea's literacy rate skyrocketed. And still to today, Korea has one of the highest literacy rates in the world.
Yeah, totally game changing there. Yeah, so so you could see how this is such a big deal, right? And so another interesting fact about Hangul is it's recognized worldwide, and it's a UNESCO has a King Sejong Literacy Prize.
Yeah, that is so
That's
cool.
huge. Yeah, so out of all the language systems and the writing systems in the world, this is recognized.
Right.
Yeah, and the reason why it's so simple, one of the reasons why, is because there are 14 consonants and 10 vowels. So that's even less than the English language.
Yeah.
Right, we have 26 letters?
Don't look at me.
Yeah, but not only that, I mean, there are so many nuances to the Korean language and how you say things and different grammar rules. And I think with Hangul, it's a lot more simplistic, and the
Yeah.
rules are definitely way more defined.
Yeah.
There's less room to wiggle. There are some things where it's like, oh, you can make an exception here and there based on like how things sound or how difficult it is to say things. But man, I'm telling you, it's so simple.
It is.
I remember learning that in just 3 weeks, maybe, not even, in high school, because I
Yeah.
didn't know how to read or write Korean. But I remember going to Korean class 3 weekends, so just 3 days total, and I literally learned it without putting too much effort into it.
Yeah.
So that's how simple it is.
Because it makes so much sense. So linguists, if you ask them, they love Hangul. People say it's the perfect phonetic system because, like you just said, with the sound you're creating with your mouth, what you write, they match so intuitively that it's extremely easy to learn. And the characters themselves reflect certain aspects. So it's not just he just created it phonetically. There was a philosophy
Which I
behind
did
the
not know.
language. This is so beautiful. And this is another indication of just how intelligent King Sejong was.
Right.
So if you don't know the Korean writing system, obviously we can't tell you it. You gotta look at it, but it uses a series of dots and lines and then connecting them to make it look more formulated as official characters. But they all indicate nature and man's interaction with heaven and earth. So all the characters have a philosophy behind it, and it was published in a newspaper when it first came out, where he was explaining, where the whole philosophy was explained, and that completely changed Korea forever.
Yeah, and again, thanks to that, I think that really contributed to how education became such a, I guess, priority, because it was the ability to be able to read, and everyone was, basically able to read at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really cool.
Oh, that's so cool. Seriously. Wow, it's awesome. Okay. Thank you for that one, King Sejong. So let's move on. This one is also related to literature in some sense. Now, in the 1440s, a man named Gutenberg created something called the press.
Yeah, he
The
did.
Gutenberg's press. Well, Gutenberg, you're a little bit behind the times.
Just a bit.
Because apparently in the 1230s, there was a Korean civil minister who created movable type first.
Yes. And his name was, hopefully I don't butcher it, Choi-Uni.
Choi-Uni.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is so cool. I love this.
Yeah, and this is something in the West I don't remember ever hearing about.
Never.
Yeah, because you do hear about the printing press. The original, and I'm doing the quotes with my fingers, the original printing press, which was invented, came out of Germany with Gutenberg. Yeah, but this is cool because I actually learned this. I don't know. I'm sure I was an adult when I learned this, and I was like, I've been robbed. You know what I mean? But
Gutenberg.
yeah. So, I mean, there's a whole history behind it, but it was primarily devised to protect Buddhism from invaders.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a whole, again, history behind it. And it was, I believe it was Japan, right?
So it was Genghis Khan.
Oh, that's
Genghis
right.
Khan
Yes,
was at this time, remember, he was advancing all over Asia.
Right.
And Korea, or the Korean Empire at that time, they wanted to protect Buddhism because Genghis Khan would come and his army would burn books and libraries and cities. This was part of their method of taking over. And so they wanted to protect Buddhism from invaders. So there was, after Genghis Khan died, however, his work was continued by a successor who was then invading Korea. At that time, Korea was the Goryeo dynasty. Now, Goryeo dynasty did a great job keeping the invaders back. And then they realized, we got to save our culture somehow. We got to save Buddhism. We got to save these teachings. And they just had either the written book that would take an awfully long time. And there were also these wooden block methods that come out of China where they just had these big wooden slabs and they would carve out every individual character and then they could stamp that. But that took a really long time, especially for manuscripts that would be literally volumes long, huge manuscripts. There was no way. It was too time consuming. And also they were wooden blocks. So if they got burned, that's it, right? You don't have anything left. So Choi-Uni, who was a civil minister in the Goryeo dynasty, there was a book called 상점 고금 예문, 50 volumes long. And in order for this to be preserved, he created the movable metal type system. So it was sort of these frames, and then each character was separately made with the metal. And then you could slide the little metal blocks onto the frame, however you wanted to phrase it to make your sentence or your characters. Then you could print it from that. But there's a reason why it didn't get so widespread.
Right, and that's because King Sejong didn't do his thing yet.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right, because there was no Hangul yet.
And so as you can imagine I don't know if anyone has ever studied Chinese or if you speak, Mandarin or anything like that, but there's so many characters.
So many.
Yeah. And so when it comes to writing, especially back hundreds of years ago, how can you do it efficiently and reproduce and create books or documents? And so I think that was probably one of the main reasons why it couldn't go too far.
Right.
Yeah.
I would have to say so. Because there's just too many pieces.
Yeah.
Because every individual character, it wasn't a combination of letters to create words. It was literally every single thing was a separate character. So as you can imagine, there's thousands of Chinese characters. You can't keep track of all of that. So while it did speed up, quote unquote, printing to create, to preserve these books, it took a very long time, and it wasn't popular enough to go outside of Goryeo dynasty as far as I could tell.
Right. So unfortunately, Mr. Choi-Uni wasn't attributed to creating
Gutenberg.
Yeah, but Gutenberg is also, he gets the praise, but it is to be noted that I think just over time, this sort of technology has developed and caught on. And Gutenberg sort of hit the jackpot with making it in a way that was the most efficient up to that point. Yeah, so he didn't come up with it from scratch. Yeah, and I don't even think that Choi-Uni did it as well. So he was also inspired. But yeah, there's hundreds of years in development. Yeah, but, again, Gutenberg, he gets the honor in the history books for that one.
Yeah. So next time you learn about Gutenberg in class, you should correct your teacher.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll go down really well. Yeah, but there is speculation that somehow Gutenberg heard of the movable type coming from Korea. We don't really know if there was any interaction happening between the East and the West to an extent where Choi-Uni's invention would have come on over.
Right.
But we'll have to see. Anyway, that was movable metal type.
Yeah.
Okay, let's... Oh, sorry. What were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Oh, let's move on to something more militaristic.
Ooh, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, you're just a very violent military guy.
Yes, exactly. Growing up in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. So the fourth invention is what's known as the turtle ship. Yes.
Or 거북선.
Yes, and this is largely associated with the Admiral Lee Sun-shin,
Yeah.
who is super revered
So
here in history
revered, yeah.
in Korea. And he's just one of those, I guess, once-in-a-lifetime type of army captains that
he's legendary.
Yeah, he just was never defeated, was very smart and very strong, with his army and his, I guess, tactics. There goes my army or military terminology.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is something that if you ever come to Korea and visit, like we did over a year ago in Yeosu, you'll see...
Oh, right.
Yeah, you'll see the turtle ship, and then you'll see Lee Sun-shin highly celebrated over there.
It was in Yeosu.
Yeah, we
that
saw a
makes
big
sense.
old replica of the turtle ship.
Because Yeosu is, it's a naval town, right? So that makes lots of sense. Lee Sun-shin, he's so legendary and so revered for his battle style, I suppose. He never lost a battle. This was during the Imjin Wars against Japanese invaders that began in 1592 and went on for about 7 years. Completely unbeaten. This was unprecedented in naval battle history. And I still don't know if he still holds that record, right? As completely unbeaten for that period of time. Even today in modern naval books studying strategies, his tactics are in there. People still study how he defeated these armies. What's so amazing about him is that he had a very, very small, underwhelming naval army compared to... Do you call it naval army? Army is for on the ground, right?
Right. I guess just naval
forces.
Naval troops, forces. Yeah, I like that. Let's go with that.
So,
I have spoken.
yes, right. The naval troops. And then the Japanese invaders at that time outnumbered by a huge amount. So Lee Sun-shin, in this case with the turtle ship, what he did is invented or took a turtle ship that someone existed already and upgraded it to be an armored battleship. So it was armored. They put these kind of spiky exteriors covering the top of the ship. So it was kind of like a big shield covering the ship. So people were protected from missiles or fire coming in. And they outfitted those ships with cannons and were able to keep it from tipping over. So this was, some people say, the first armored battleship in history.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of?
What?
In Mario Kart, where you can get those little weapons, and it has the turtle shell with the spikes.
Oh,
yeah, that's the most powerful one. That's, I guess, if you want to have some sort of a visual imagery, it's something like that, except much bigger and with cannons.
Right.
Yeah.
I bet that was, the creators of Mario Kart.
That's
representing Lee Sun-shin.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That was probably it.
Yeah, but I mean, this ship was pretty, I guess, pretty innovative at the time, and I could only imagine. I mean, I saw some paintings of the ships, and there were different like ships at the time.
Yeah,
I think there weren't like tons and tons of ships, and it eventually died out because it wasn't as. I think it's. We look back and we're like, wow, this was like such a great like invention, but I think at the time after it was used, it sort of, died out and just went out of commission, so to speak. And they used other, means. But now looking back, we can really realize how awesome that was at the time. It is
awesome.
Yeah, armored ship, and arguably, again, one of the most, or the first armored battleship.
Yeah, he made it fast. It was protected. And there are records stating when the enemy saw these ships, they felt such fear in their hearts. That's what these ships indicated. They were symbolic of Lee Sun-shin and his dangerous strikes.
Just imagine a big old turtle shell in the distance while you're on the water.
That would be terrifying.
Oh my gosh, with spikes.
Yeah. That is the Kobusan. And there are some places around Korea, either in museums or sometimes they have, I guess, wooden structures, depends on where you go, where they show the Kobusan.
Right.
It's a very cool part of Korean history. Moving on, away from military, let's move into the arts. Let's go and explore Celadon Pottery.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, and I didn't know what it was when we were researching this until I actually looked it up.
Well, you've seen it before,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So like when I first heard Celadon Pottery,
Celadon politics.
right. When I first heard Celadon Pottery, I didn't really know what it was until I saw pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, it's the pretty, like, usually it's like this green.
Yeah, it's usually
greenish-
this green. It's called jade. People would refer to it as a jade color.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really pretty. But yeah, it's this green jade, super smooth, glazed pottery. And it was produced during the Goryeo dynasty. And yeah, it's considered the finest and most elegant pottery, especially at that time. I think there were already like Celadon potteries, but I think Korea, once they got a hold of that technology, within a matter of a century or two, they really just sort of evolutionized it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just surpassed everybody else.
Right.
And there's a great example of this. But first, so Celadon pottery, it's a prized collector's item today. If you come across some fine Celadon pottery work, well, you're in luck, my friend. That could be a collector's item. They were, like you mentioned, produced somewhere else first. They produced in China first, but once that technique came to Korea, they just took it and ran with it.
Yeah.
And it became so beautiful and prized throughout even Asia. And even today, they can find it still in royal tombs. It was used to put in tombs for kings and queens. And you can see a difference between Korean Celadon pottery and perhaps earlier generations' work or other countries' work. Because Korea Celadon pottery, the design is inlaid before the glazing,
Yeah.
right? So you can see, it looks almost like little fine cracks. You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's kind of like when you look at a photo, it's almost like the design is under the glossy
Yeah,
finish.
yeah.
And so you could tell it's under there instead of on top. Yeah, so, and it just makes it look a lot smoother. Just like
Yeah.
a glossy photo makes whatever you took a picture of just look smoother instead
Yeah.
of matte. Yeah.
It's beautiful. My mom loves Celadon pottery.
Oh, maybe we should.
We should get her one.
Yeah, we should get her one.
Something nice, right? If you're wondering how the green color was made, I pulled this directly from the article. The green color made by firing clay in an oxygen-reducing kiln with a glaze containing a low percentage of iron oxide at 1,150 degrees Celsius. So for all of you potters out there, that was for you. Everyone else, you can just ignore that.
Yeah.
So let's move on to some other type of vessel.
Yeah. The next one is Ongi, which
Ongi.
is a traditional earthenware vessel. And if you're wondering what this is, you've probably seen it. If you have any
Probably.
interest in Korean culture, if you're, even half Korean or fully Korean, you've probably seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's still highly visible around here, especially,
Sure.
I would say, in the rural areas for sure.
Yeah.
But also on random rooftops here in Seoul.
You're right. Yeah, if you look outside a window, if you're living in an apartment or a higher complex, oftentimes people have these ongi pots. Did we say that they're pots?
I don't know.
They're
But they're
pots.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see
Usually
them
big
everywhere.
pots.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have all
Different
kinds of
sizes.
sizes. And even today now, it's kind of more, can be kitschy or artistic to have
Sure.
smaller ones. But they all generally look the same. Ongi pot it's this brown or sometimes black. Pot is either glazed or unglazed. It's made of clay. I think it's made of clay.
Yeah.
It's typically undesigned. There's no painting or anything fancy about it. But the thing that's special about this vessel, and they can be really big too, is that you can store fermented food in there, like kimchi or doenjang or gochujang, and some people still store it in there, keeps it fresh. It's a sort of refrigeration system.
Right.
It has to do with the type of clay that they use. It's porous and somehow it's bacteria prevention, something like that.
Yeah, there are several different methods of making the ongi, depending on what you want to use it for.
Right.
And what you want to store in there.
Yeah.
Which is, again, crazy with the
brilliant.
technology. Yeah.
Seriously, it's so brilliant. They're also environmentally friendly, so
Ooh,
you
I
don't
know
need
you
to
like that.
worry about anything else happening to the environment using ongis. And they're one of the 100 cultural symbols of Korea. So
Makes sense.
if you want to know more about Korea, check out some ongi pots.
Totally.
We have ongi pots at our house. We always had them growing up.
Oh, really?
That's where my mom would store rice, and sometimes she would store other things that she was making, like pickles or peppers. Yeah, I just remember we always had ongi pots.
Yeah.
So to me, it wasn't unusual. I was just, oh yeah, this is what it does.
Right, that's cool. I don't remember us having it growing up. Maybe we did, but my mom would use mostly like glass jars to store food in. But yeah, that's
Kimchi,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So ongi. I bet some of our older generations will recognize ongi pots in their households. Okay, so let's look at something else that I guarantee every single Korean person has used, probably since childhood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know I have.
This is the Italy towel, which you would think, hang on, this is a Korean invention. Why do you call it the Italy towel? So here is the backstory. Actually, we should probably tell people what it is first. Huh?
Right. Yeah, it's essentially like a little, let's see if I can describe it. It's like a little bath towel primarily. And it's sort of like a mix between a washcloth and sandpaper. You put those together.
Yes, that's it.
Right.
That's exactly it. I definitely remember having my skin peeled off by that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's quite rough, and then what you can do is just use it you can use it with soap, and then you can sort of exfoliate. And though I don't use this particular like style one, I use one very similar. It's like a longer rag that I've used like my whole life.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much similar. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you just like, it's very rough, and if you're not used to it, then it's a little weird, but I'm so used to it, and I feel like that has really helped my skin.
I don't understand how you can bathe without this.
Yeah, I mean, once, like, if you're used to bathing with it, it's almost like how do you get clean without it?
Right. That's how I feel. This revolutionized bathing in Korea.
Yeah.
It really did. So the Italy towel, you've probably seen it at a Korean sauna, for example. If you go to Korean Mart, you're going to see them, of course. And if your mom's Korean, I'm almost 100% sure that you've used this in your house.
Yeah.
They will sometimes, I guess now they kind of look lime green. They'll be like lime green or pinks. Yellow is a popular color. But the Italy towel, why it's called Italy towel is because that material, the main material they use is viscose rayon, and it was imported from Italy. So a man named Kim Pil-gun, he's the one who invented this. He was working at a textile factory in Busan in the 1960s, and he came across this material, and then he created the Italy towel, and then started telling other people, and it shaped over time. He made it into a little mitten, and he made a huge profit from this. So well done, Kim Pil-gun.
Yeah, it's everywhere. I think I've even seen you have it.
Of course I have it.
Yeah, I have my other version.
You're right. I have one.
You do.
Yeah.
It's a yellow one, right?
Actually, I don't know now.
Yeah, I think it's like a little
maybe it's
yellow.
yellow. Yeah. So Italy towel is you're gonna see it everywhere. People use it when you're just scrubbing and cleaning your skin. Hey,
Yeah.
in case people who have no experience with Korean culture whatsoever, if you look at Conan O'Brien, there is an episode where he goes to a Korean sauna with Stephen Yeun
Yeah.
or Yoon. I don't know how he pronounces it.
I'm not sure how you
American
pronounce
Fied.
it. Yeah.
But they go and get the scrubbing done.
Yeah, super popular
때미는 거
episode.
by the ajishis.
Right.
So you can see what it looks like there.
Right.
If you're okay looking at naked
Old man.
Conan O'Brien.
Old man.
Yeah. So the luxurious name Italy towel made it, of course, very attractive at the time. And its usefulness just changed Korean bathing culture forever. And now it's everywhere. And you should pick one up because that's how you get clean.
Absolutely.
All right. You ready for the next one?
The next one is, and this is shocking, and this is kind of
Was this shocking?
it
This
was
one?
well, not shocking. Okay, I didn't know.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to or who to attribute this invention to, but it makes sense because a lot of electronics comes out of Korea and Japan. But it is the MP3 player.
Yeah.
Can
The
you believe
MP
that?
Man.
Yeah.
MP Man. I always just imagine that was the song.
MP man.
MP Man. MP Man.
Yeah, very robotic, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the MP3 player actually first originated from a company here in Korea not too long ago. So
Yeah.
a little over 20 years ago.
Well, MP3 hasn't been around a long time.
It It has, well, the MP3, I guess.
The MP3 file styles started coming out in the 90s.
Yeah.
And then the MP3 player, which utilized the MP3 files, came out late 90s.
Yeah, because I was downloading MP3s illegally
Yeah.
in middle school. So that was like 97, 98.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it would take like 20 minutes to download a 3-minute song.
Do you remember when you would rip CDs?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was for me. I got such a thrill doing that.
Man. Yeah, it's like the world opened up.
It did.
Yeah.
Seriously. Suddenly I could just say to my friend, hey, you have that new CD by... Actually, I didn't listen to modern music now that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I used to rip off like Britney Spears and
That's what I meant.
A lot of Korean music too. Yeah, so obviously MP3s were available and were there, but the only thing that, what was natural for people like us and people like me to do with MP3s is to either have it on your computer or to burn it onto a CD.
Right.
Using those CDRWs or something like that.
Yeah.
So those were the days. But in 1998, in March of that year, a small tech startup called Celadon Information Systems introduced the MP-Man, which is their MP3 player, the very first which is the very first MP3 player. Sorry, let me start that over.
Okay.
In 1998, in March, a small tech startup called Celadon Information Systems introduced the first MP3 player called the MP-Man at a booth
MP-Man. MP-Man.
at an annual product fair in Germany.
Yeah.
And no one knew what the heck it was, and no one even really cared.
Right.
Which is sort of the sad part of the story.
I know. It's so
Yeah.
sad. I just envision these two Korean guys and they have glasses
Right.
and suits and they're like, MP-Man, MP-Man.
Singing the song.
And the people are like, what are you saying?
Right.
And the Korean people are like, I don't speak German. And then the German people are like, I don't speak Korean. What are you saying?
I
that's
know.
probably what happens.
It's funny because the first MP3 player could only hold up to about 10 MP3 songs.
I know. Yeah. I mean, it's cute.
Yeah,
But
so-
this is revolutionary, of course.
Oh, definitely. So they were the first to come up with this technology. So again, no one cared because CDs was the main thing.
Of course.
Cassettes were phasing out at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unfortunately, it didn't catch on during that time in March of 98.
Yeah.
But
It's pretty sad, though, because it wasn't that long after when another company came up with a different MP3 player, which was better. And then Samsung bought it from that company instead of the original MP-Man. And then, of course, soon after that, Apple, whom had taken over the tech world by storm, they launched the Ipod Nano. Do you remember the Ipod Nano?
I do.
Yeah, I do too. I never got
That
one.
was the super little square one without the
small
screen.
one.
Yeah.
I have a classic. Those ones were the best.
Yeah, I never had the classic. I had the iPod
missed
Touch.
out.
That was my first MP3 player.
No, iPod Touch doesn't even compare. There was something about the way the
yeah,
classic
y-
worked and how it felt.
Yeah, I think my friend, you know who I'm talking about, my childhood best friend.
Yeah.
I think he had the regular original one. And I
Yeah.
remember just feeling how, I don't know, it's not really a scrolly wheel, but it's like touch.
Yeah, but
sensitive
it's just
something.
the sensory of it, the sensory style. It's just so nice.
Apple's king of the feel, man.
Yeah, I remember I had the classic and then I kept it for all the years while they were coming out with all these new MP3 style things and putting it on your phone. And I resisted that because I didn't want to use anything else because my classic was the best. And then it broke. So I went to the Apple store to get it fixed. And then, the people who work at the Genius Bar was like, how can I help you today? And I said, my classic, my MP3 classic, it's not working. And he looked at it. And he said, I'm sorry, ma'am, what is this? That's how far
Yeah.
Apple had moved on and how far in the past I was
Yeah.
remaining.
But shame on them for not at least knowing what that
Yeah, they
was.
call themselves the Genius Bar. More like I don't know, my history bar. So Apple launched the iPod Nano. And then, naturally, cheap ripoffs were happening in China. And so Korea was in the middle of this market of these very sleek, high quality, top of the line Apple Nanos. And then these very cheap options coming from China. And there just was no market for Korea's MP3. So basically it was dead.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. From Korea, nobody associates the MP3 player to Korea. There is a story that says Mr. Moon from Samsung We don't know if this is true or not, but the story goes is he was on an airplane. And while he was on an airplane, he saw this man who was listening to music from his computer. Mr. Moon, at that time, was reading about MP3 files, getting ahead of the game. And he saw that man. He saw his research. He was like, whoa, this music could be stored, preserved, shared on one single device. We could create that.
Right.
And that's the story.
Yeah, it might be true. But, as fate would have it, Samsung didn't really put much focus onto their MP3 players. They had other aspirations, like really just working in the phone market and really dominating that, which they did, and they're still doing a phenomenal job with, because on the phone you can obviously, especially with smartphones, you can put music on there. You can multi-use with everything. Yeah, so unfortunately, the MP3 player didn't really have a huge market here in terms of originating or like coming out with MP3 players compared to in the West and really with Apple and other companies that were starting to.
I think everyone relates MP3 players with Apple.
Yeah.
I can't even think of any other company that creates them.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I think MP3 players have been uncommon for, I don't know, well over a decade. I think people still can buy MP3 players, and even at Apple, I think they still
classic.
have. Yeah, if you want to, I guess. iPod Touch. I don't even know. I think they still make a version.
I don't think they make them.
Oh, well, never mind.
Yeah. I still have mine. It's in a box under my bed.
Oh, really?
Because I still harbor hopes that I can use it one day.
It's still broken, right?
Isn't that sad, actually? That's really sad. I've kept it all these years, and I've never used it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, it might be worth something one day.
Maybe I'll keep holding it. I'm going to sell it one day at those places where they sell Beanie Babies and stuff, and people get loads of money for that.
Absolutely.
So let's now talk about math, my favorite topic.
Oh, yeah. So this one, I think you and I were both struggling with.
This was a little confusing.
It's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
And the reason why we're struggling with it, well, two different reasons. One, I think for you, math is,
What is it?
It's not your favorite subject in the world.
Diplomatic, okay.
And for me, I've never really understood this sort of system because I wasn't around it.
Because you're just so smart and you can just calculate everything in your brain.
Of course.
Other people have to use their fingers.
Well, I know how to use a calculator.
By other people, I mean me.
Yes. So this invention, if you will, is called the 치산법.
치산법.
Yeah, so it's like a abacus.
Do you know what an abacus is?
I know what it looks like.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like this box thing with little beads, and there's like 4 levels of bead thingies, and then there's a separation, and then there's one on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of like your hand, which has 4 fingers and a thumb. And
Oh, okay. I was about to say you have 5 fingers.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. You
4 fingers and
separated
a
the thumb. Mhm.
Yes. And I've seen it. I've just never used it. I didn't know what it was used for. So
abacus.
This is quite interesting. But this is really just a finger counting method that's quite brilliant from what I can understand. Yeah. So it was created in the 1940s and came to the US in 1977.
Yeah, there was some kind of, I guess it's a mathematics convention that happened. I mean, I don't know why you would go to that, but some people do. And there was a mathematics convention in the States. And so a mathematician from Korea who had created the 치산법 came and showcased it there. And I imagine it created a bit of a stir, like, oh, this is very interesting. And people tried to use it in some schools. They actually did try to take it off there, but it never really caught on. So it was kind of just, oh, that's a cute thing. Apparently it's very common in Korea. And you know what? I like to think of myself as just intuitively understanding 치산법 because I always count on my fingers.
You do. You have your own method.
I do have my own counting style, don't I?
Yeah, it's a little not weird.
I can't
but
explain it to anyone.
yeah, I mean, as long as it's accurate and works for you, hey.
It's usually not, but it helps to keep track of things.
Yeah.
But 치산법, I guess we didn't really explain what it is. It's basically, it's like having an abacus, but you're using your fingers instead of rows of beads. Your thumb, or let's see, I think one hand is a placeholder, like a unit placeholder. So your right hand would be your 10s, your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. And there's a way that you can indicate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with how many fingers you have holding up.
Yeah, it's like 1 is how you would normally
1, 2,
do 1.
with the pointer finger.
Yeah, at least in the West. So pointer finger 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5 is where instead of putting out your thumb, you put out like I don't know, like your index with your thumb or something like that. It's a little, it's not super intuitive.
Actually, wait, I think you're right. Pointer finger is 1, peace sign 2, then 3, 4. 5 would be your thumb. 5 is your thumb up. 6 is like a gun with your finger, and then 7, 8, 9. So the only limitation is it can only go up to 9 figures.
Right, 0 to 9. So I think
0 to 9,
I think if you ball up your fist, that's 0.
Maybe that is 0.
I think so. Yeah. And then your other hand is
your singles.
Yeah.
Right. So you would have. This is 11.
I think.
I think this is 11.
Well, so
this is 21.
I think the other hand is like 10s, 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So one hand is the single digits, and then the next are the 10s, 20s. Anyways, look it up. You can Google it and discover how to do the method. But it's really interesting because I can imagine a lot of people in Korea, even to this day, can still do it very intuitively.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it just helps them to keep track or to count and to do I guess.
Well, you can add and subtract and multiply and divide using this system.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so definitely look it up. Don't take it from us.
We did a great job explaining it, but check it out elsewhere too.
Absolutely.
So that's 지산법. And then the last one. This one actually was a little bit hard to find English information on it. I don't know were you able to find any English articles?
No. I think we saw the same resources. Yeah.
So I had to specifically only Korean sites were explaining Tamo because I gotta say it's a bit obscure what Tamo is. So Tamo is our last one, number 10. And I suppose you could call it an invention.
And a positional invention for women.
That's right. So Tamo, in short, was the first female police officer who had arrest capabilities in history, in the world. So the Tamo started in the Joseon dynasty era. And a Tamo is very similar to a female detective. Basically, she kind of was, it's almost like a spy, I guess, or a private eye. She could go places men could not go because of, let's say, etiquette, or it would just be suspicious. Say they needed to go to women's bathhouses, or they had to ask men certain questions that if a man asked it would be very weird. So they could ask these questions and sneak around without being suspicious or breaking social norms. And they were very useful, especially when tracking adultery or affairs. So they were very good at that, and they could covertly investigate people. And I just love this, the requirements to be a Tamo. Did you see that too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It is pretty fun. The requirements to be a Tamo. You had to be tall, physically strong. You had to drink well without getting drunk. As I imagine, if you're having these conversations with guys in bars and, drink, of course, drink. I serve you, I drink. Yeah, let's have a drink. And she can't get drunk. She's got to keep her senses. She carried a rope as a weapon, as well as an iron flail.
Dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that is used to break down doors and stuff as
cool.
needed. Yeah, so it's it's pretty intimidating. But you know what's funny? As I was looking up the requirements, I feel like you would fit the bill.
I would definitely have been Tamo.
Tall, strong, and you can definitely hold your alcohol.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. Of course. I would have been a great Tamo.
So the thing is, I don't know if you would be willing to do that because, they were very on the totem pole or social ladder.
Yeah.
They were on the bottom.
Right.
Yeah.
They were servant class.
Yeah, servant class. So I don't know if that's something you would aspire to be.
No. Well, interesting fact about totem poles, since you mentioned that. I just want to throw this out there.
Sure.
A lot of people have the misconception that when you say you're low on the totem pole, it means that your social status is lower. But it's actually vice versa. The traditional totem pole was created only by specific masters, right, of the Native American tribes. And each totem pole would look different depending on who the master was. And the master would be the one carving the bottom figures on the totem pole. So naturally, those would be the ones that were the highest prized. So when you say low on the totem pole, you're actually talking about the best part of it.
Man, the moment you find out you've been using a phrase wrong.
Yeah.
All this time.
So I would actually be high on the totem pole if I was a Tamo.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, they were served in class. And there's some questions about where the word tamo came from. 다 다 was a character meaning 어린 소녀. So like young girl. It could have meant young girl. So were only young girls able to be tamo? This is a question. And also it could have come from 찬모, which is the word for the emo or the auntie who was working at the, it's all in Korean. Sorry, I'm getting confused. 양반집.
Yeah.
You know, 양반?
So it's like
The aristocrat. So the emo or the auntie who would work or make tea at the 양반's house, the aristocrat's house.
Right.
So did it come from that word or from the women who worked in tea houses? We're not entirely sure. But regardless, tamo could be quite fearsome, and they could bring in criminals for trial forcibly. Right. They had arrest capabilities and had to be strong enough to do that. So that is pretty amazing if you think they might have been the first police female officers in the world.
Yeah.
Well done, Korea, for being strangely forward-thinking while also putting women down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so very fun fact. So which one of these, because we went through all 10, which one surprised you the most?
The movable type.
Oh, really?
Really, I had never heard of that. I'd always thought of Gutenberg's press first. So that I found to be particularly ingenious. And the other thing that I had never, ever considered was the Italy towel. It was just so, prevalent in my life. It was just a thing. Oh, yeah, everyone uses it. It's so obvious. But to think, like, actually somebody, there was bathing existing before the Italy towel. And I never knew it was called Italy towel either.
Right.
So that was interesting.
Same. Yeah, so that was, rather than surprising, that was just interesting. Yeah, like you said. I think for me, the MP3 player was the most surprising, but I think it was more the story behind it. And the fact that the originators of it really just, like, the company just died out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then their invention literally just
Changed
took over
the
the whole,
world.
changed the whole world, took over music listening as we know it. So yeah, that's sad, just knowing that you came up with that, you and your partner, and
at that point, what
you
can
don't
you
get the credit
do,
for it.
right?
Yeah.
If you're walking past the storefront and you see those fancy Apple ads where they're listening to the music, like the shadow people on colored backgrounds, you know what I'm talking about? Everyone has the Apple ad. And you'd be like, I made that. And passerbys be like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
That would be the worst feeling ever.
Right.
But we acknowledge you today.
Absolutely. So hopefully, wherever you are in the world, that
you're listening to our podcast.
Indeed.
Oh, wow. Okay, that was a fun one. 10 Korean inventions. I do recommend you guys check out more, learn about it, because it's fascinating for sure. And that being said, it's time for some listener mail.
Ooh, it's been a while.
It has been a while, and we are just so happy to have some mail. We got this one from a gentleman named James, and his subject is 3 Halfie daughters, 3 different paths. And he says, hi, I'm an Army veteran and met my wife while being stationed in Korea between 1985 and 87. We were blessed with 3 daughters, like my family. But they faced many struggles growing up in a predominantly white Pennsylvania, USA community. Each has followed different paths and therefore has their own story. And he says his 3 girls, one is in the US Army, and one is professional ballerina, and then one is a college student and aspiring singer. Oh. Very, very cool. And he mentions his daughter, who is a singer. She's very interested in telling her story and promoting her music. So he sent us her single, You Don't Know Me, which was released under her stage name, James the 7th. So you can look up James the 7th on Spotify, Apple, and other platforms. And he sent us a link to her song.
Oh, very
and
cool.
It's pretty great. Yeah. So James, thanks for writing in. And also, huge thank you for supporting your daughters.
Absolutely.
In their paths.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's it. If you guys ever want to write us listener mail, or if you've got questions or things to say, you can always get in touch at thehalfieproject@gmail.com. Make sure to listen to this podcast and share with all your friends and subscribe to the YouTube channel, The Halfie Project. And that's it. We'll see you next week. We are The Halfie Project.